with breaking news out of Minnesota, where the Vikings had fired GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah after 4 seasons. This firing coming just 7 months after signing a multi-year contract extension with the team. Our Adam Schefter posted more background on the firing on X. Throughout the season, there was talk about an underlying tension in the Vikings building and league circles. One league source said it had been ugly in Minnesota. Then today, the Vikings fired Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. Vikings owner and team president Mark Wilf spoke to the media moments ago.
This is a critical offseason. Ultimately, we felt the change was necessary in football operations and did not feel comfortable going forward into this offseason with the current leadership. It's not about any one decision or move. We looked at the situation cumulatively. We just didn't feel confident going through the entirety of the offseason, an additional draft, and free agency with this structure.
Okay, so much to get into on this Friday. Glad you're with us today. Mina, RC, Swagoo here for the hour. Mina, I'll start with you. What's your reaction to this news?
Yeah, I'm surprised. Not surprised by the decision, but surprised by the timing. That's what's shocking here, right? Because Viking season ended weeks ago. They had their meetings back then, sent him to the Senior Bowl, apparently. The timing makes me think this is reactive to Sam Darnold being in the Super Bowl. It's hard not to feel that way. Now, as far as whether that's fair, I don't think that's fair. I think it is fair, however, to criticize the draft classes, and those have been shared widely today. The Vikings have had a lot of misses in the draft, none greater, of course, than the pick of J.J. McCarthy, their quarterback. I know it's too soon to say that completely, but obviously the early results are not promising. There's nothing wrong than moving off of a veteran quarterback who struggled at the end of the season and drafting a rookie in the first round. It has worked for a lot of teams, but you have to hit on that rookie. And more so than hit on that rookie, guys, if they had even gotten average quarterback play out of their rookie, I frankly think that he would still have his job. But it was far from that, and that's how you end up in this position. You can't miss on the most important position in the game.
Absolutely. And now there's a history of these draft picks not landing or not being productive under Adofo-Mensah, but it's obviously pinpointed and centering around J.J. McCarthy. I do believe that it's partly because Sam Darnold was able to go off and have this fantasy season and lead a team to the Super Bowl, but it's the fact that J.J. McCarthy was in the building. J.J. McCarthy was there during training camp. You knew a little bit about who he was, and with having him in the building, you still made the evaluation that led to the decision of allowing Sam Darnold to be acquired by the Seattle Seahawks. And when you look at this team, you go from 14-3. You're a team that's in the playoffs, and then the next year you completely miss, and you miss because of not bad quarterback play, but at times terrible and inexcusable quarterback play, while your quarterback, or the quarterback of last year, is now starting in the Super Bowl for the Super Bowl favorite.
Ooh.
Yeah, MK and RC, y'all both alluded to it. And obviously seeing Sam Darnold now in the Super Bowl. But I think the point is that you just talked about, this was a 14-win team last year. I'm not sure if Sam Darnold being in the Super Bowl adds more pressure than the fact that you saw this decline from 1 year. Now, the quarterback obviously is the common denominator in Sam Darnold, but the J.J. McCarthy part of it, you took a swing on a quarterback that you thought would be a good first rounder. And I know we've gotten to a point since we've been on this show for a lot of these rookies that have performed very well in their first year. But ultimately, this is always a situation where it's up for grabs if you really got the guy that you hope you got. But I think the most important point, the way I look at it in my estimation, is the fact that you were a 14-win team last year. You did get really good quarterback play out of Sam Darnold. You had an opportunity to go into the playoffs, and we know how that ended, but you made that decision based solely off 2 games at the end of the year as opposed to the complete body of work. And now we sit here with Sam Darnold being in the Super Bowl. To go from a 14-win team to what we saw the Minnesota Vikings become this year, I think speaks more to why Kwesi is no longer there.
Yeah, go ahead, RC.
Yeah, Mina, I know you talk to a lot of these GMs and you deal in the analytics with a lot of these departments. How do you think they came to the decision in the offseason? Because you had already acquired acquired J.J. McCarthy. How much of a general manager and executives wanting to be right about drafting a guy leads to someone like Sam Darnold leaving the building?
You know, I think this is more about player evaluation than it is about any analytic strategy, because we all know having a rookie quarterback who's good on a rookie contract is a cheat code in the NFL. One of them is in the Super Bowl right now, and that's a large part of why the Patriots were able to load up in free agency at the position and spend elsewhere and spend so much money. It doesn't take an analytics expert to want that to happen, and it's a big part of why so many quarterbacks were drafted in the first round that year, right? Including, of course, Atlanta and Denver, who made it into the playoffs as well. But this is not about analytics. This is about choosing and developing the quarterback. And that's where this went south. And as far as who chose him and the development, well, that's kind of the missing piece here, or at least there's going to be more information out of that. But, of course, Kwesi is the GM, so ultimately he does bear responsibility.
Go ahead, Swag.
Yeah, I think, man, I love that you asked that question, RC, because a big part of it is, too, did you get caught up in thinking that Sam Darnold had maximized everything that he could do and kind of fell into the idea of that this was a one-year wonder, right? Are you paying for that more than making a decision about taking a quarterback? And obviously it wasn't a one-year wonder, because Sam has performed well throughout the season for the Seattle Seahawks. That's why I say the amount of pressure that probably those last two games as an organization said, the question probably that they asked themselves is, can we win a Super Bowl? We see that we can have a really good season. We see that we can position ourselves for a really good playoff spot, but can we win a Super Bowl? And they made that bet on J.J. McCarthy, thinking that it was more about Sam Darnold's 2 games than the 14 the previous that they had seen, which is a slippery slope. And to your point, Mina, like, you could play the analytics. Go ahead, RC.
No, but what we're seeing is that also leads to why Adolfo Mensa isn't there, because John Snyder built this infrastructure around Sam Darnold. And obviously he wasn't there last year, but you do have Cooper Kupp and you have JSN, Kenneth Walker ascends, a line of scrimmage that you now control. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you continually give yourself chances to win. It's the general manager's job to hit in many positions, in many ways, and add depth. And that's where he failed just as much as this single decision probably was the nail in the coffin for the decision makers.
It's great context. I mean, you guys, if you think about this just purely from the financial standpoint that Mina's bringing up, you know, the quarterback on the rookie contract, there's not many guys that are looking at this from the business side, which is also the job of the GM, that would say, oh, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and spend all this money on a Sam Darnold who didn't do a great job in the postseason for them last year, small sample size. We're not making excuses for him, but you can see how they would have gotten to this point, and you can also see why this could be a knee-jerk reaction. Swag, you had a final word? Yeah.
Boogie, that's the point, right? Like, did you bet on the 2 bad games that Sam Darnold had, or did you not let the 14 wins in your season be the biggest part of your decision-making? Because I'm sure this team said, we still have the same head coach, we still have the same defensive coordinator. And remember last year, y'all, even with Sam Darnold playing that well, we talked about how good the Minnesota defense was with Brian Flores. This was a full fail, and I think it had more to do with the quarterback competence than it did with the roster.
Mina.
I think it's really just about the quarterback they chose. Guys, he just had to be average, and they would have kept, you know, this is an amazing defense. I really think that. And I would compare him actually not to John Schneider, but to Joe Shane in New York, who also let a quarterback walk out, overpaid a quarterback, walked out the door. The quarterback was better. Daniel Jones, who, of course, played in Minnesota as well, and has also struck out a lot in the draft. And their team has been significantly less successful. But Jackson Dart had a good rookie season, and thus he's still the GM of the New York Giants.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Ultimately, that's just what it comes down to. You just got to find these quarterbacks, and that's ultimately what saves or doesn't save jobs.
And, Mina, you said this well earlier. I mean, it's still a little early to fully say J.J. McCarthy is not going to be a success in the NFL, but he had the lowest completion percentage in the NFL this season at 58%. So, like you said, not average at all. He was below average and wasn't healthy. All right, new on NFL Live. Staying in the NFC North, the Packers have signed Brian Gutekunst, Matt LaFleur, and Russ Ball to contract extensions. So that's something to keep an eye on. There were some questions, of course, for a while there if LaFleur would move on, he's going to stay. Now, speaking of Green Bay, the Eagles are hiring Packers quarterback coach Sean Mannion as their new offensive coordinator. We were waiting for this one, right? For Jalen Hurts, it now marks his 13th play caller of his college and pro career as Philly tries to reset an offense that couldn't seem to find their rhythm this season. And it has been a bit of a free fall for this Eagles offense. Philly ranked top 6 in rush yards per game, efficiency, and first downs per game last season. They were the bottom half of the league in all 3 this season. Didn't look pretty either. Sean Mannion, set to be the Eagles' 5th offensive coordinator in 6 seasons under Nick Sirianni. RC, there's so much that goes with this. It's not just getting this offense back on track. It's dealing with what it's like to be the OC of the Philadelphia Eagles, that fan base, what you may deal with. What do you think of this hire of Sean Mannion?
Well, I think Sean Mannion has some things that work in his favor. He was in the quarterback room, not to me that developed Jordan Love, but one that's helped Malik Willis progress and become a quarterback who in this offseason can be one of the hottest free agents. You've worked with Matt LaFleur. My question is, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, why wasn't your job more attractive to coaches, to quarterback coaches, or to former OCs and head coaches who could have gotten this job? When you look at guys like Mike McDaniel and Brian Daboll, with having Saquon Barkley, AJ, Devontae on the outside, and obviously Jalen Hurts at the quarterback position. When you look at the last few hires, Shane Steichen and Kellen Moore, both were previous play callers. We go to Brian Johnson and Kevin Patullo, who were elevated off of the staff, and those guys struggled. And so I know you would have wanted an experienced play caller. We have to wait and see how well Sean Mannion works, but I would love to know the process of landing on him as the next OC.
I mean, you have to believe, RC, to your point, that the outside part of it has something to do with some of this decision-making from these offensive coordinators dealing with what the Philly fans are, right? And look, we talked about that throughout the season with Patullo and the egging of his house and all of that. I'm sure, like, we have to remember, man, these are people. And these guys have families that they have to think about as well. And I'm sure conversations are going around more than just, hey, I want to go coach there. But I want to get to the point with Sean Mannion, because I think you made the best one. And it was the development of Malik Willis. And it also was how well he threw the football down the field. Y'all, let's make no mistake about it. Like, Philly had to get better at being creative. They had to get better at play calling and putting, Jalen Hurts and these wide receivers in a better situation. But also, one thing that lacked this year was them being able to push the ball down the field. Even when they were a heavy run team on their way to the Super Bowl, we saw more explosive outings from them throughout the season through the air. And I think that has something to do with it. And then you look at it from Mannion's perspective, you're working with a quarterback with some of the same similarities and traits that y'all, why is the name
Malik Willis, Jalen Hurts.
Malik Willis that Malik Willis had. So I think there was I think there was an enticing measure for him about that correlation between Malik Willis and Jalen Hurts as well.
They do have a lot in common in terms of the dual threat ability, the preference to throw the ball deep outside the numbers. So there is some interesting connective fiber there. I think what Green Bay was able to do with Willis that Philadelphia could not was run the ball, not Willis carrying the football, but the entire run game, whereas the Eagles' run game was awful. And I keep going back to that. That has to be a priority for Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts is, I think, a quarterback with, a tremendous ceiling, but to get there, you have to have the run game because of his preference to throw the ball away from the middle of the field. You have to get certain defensive looks against him, and you cannot unless you can run the football. This job, to me, is like the ultimate high-risk, high-reward job, right? The bar is so low from last year. You have the potential to show some real improvement, and obviously you have great pieces to work with. But we also know the risk that comes with it because of the scrutiny. I do like the idea that I like the fact that they went outside, not just with Mannion, but also Josh Grizzard from Tampa. I think the fact that they're bringing in outside thinking is a good thing if you're Philadelphia, because we saw last season what happened when they just went internally with Sirianni's friend.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up Josh Grizzard because I realize it didn't work out with Baker Mayfield in Tampa. They moved on, but I think he's a talented offensive mind and will bring a lot potentially to Jalen Hurts. Hurts, by the way, 200 fewer rushing yards and 4 fewer rushing touchdowns this season compared to last season. If they could get his legs going, the rush offense would look a little different too. We're just getting started. NFL Live on this Friday. Glad you're with us. The Joe Brady way as we return on NFL Live. From Adam Schefter, ESPN sources, the Baltimore Ravens are hiring Bears offensive coordinator Declan Doyle as their OC. Doyle can leave because in Baltimore he'll have play calling responsibilities. But new Ravens head coach Jesse Minter now has someone to run Baltimore's offense. Interesting. We were waiting to see what move this would be, and this is it. Declan Doyle taking over. We saw certainly, you guys, what he was able to do with the Bears and Caleb Williams in that season last year. Marcus, what do you think of this hire for Lamar Jackson and company?
I love this hire. One, he's coming from who we regard as one of the top play callers in the league with his head coach, but also a team that's really committed to running the football. And you see the development of Caleb Williams under his tutelage as well. So you look at Lamar. Lamar already has all of these phenomenal characteristics as a quarterback, but there were times I think situational is what the Ravens needed to get better at offensively, like game by game, specific situational, the way that they wanted to call plays. It always seemed like when the firestorm come, now we'll hand the ball to Derrick Henry and we'll become a little bit more nuanced with our run game. So I look forward to seeing some of the creativity that we know is going to come over from what they were able to do in Chicago. I'm excited about it. And obviously it's something that Lamar Jackson either signed off on or had some conversation with based on how we heard this would go from Bisciotti and also how we heard Jesse Minter talk about putting Lamar in a position to be even better than what we've seen him be.
Yeah, share a lot of those sentiments. First of all, I had to get over the fact that I saw he's 29 years old, which makes me want to just like crawl into the ocean.
That's crazy, right?
How impossible. How are we so old, guys?
I'm sure he's very good, but that's just really young. Marcus, you made a really good point there. There's a lot of through lines between the Bears offense and what the Ravens do and what we think that they should do. Love the fact that he worked with tight ends. The Ravens are a very tight end centric offense, of course. The run game with Chicago, you saw a lot of similar creativity in terms of formation and personnel usage, motion to open up things. But the difference, of course, being now he gets the greatest asset to a run game anyone can have, and that's Lamar Jackson. So I'm excited to see that, the play action pass off of that. And this is an opportunity for like the quarterback and the play caller, who are pretty close in age, to grow together, right? Because I think Marcus is right. I think Lamar had a hand here. You got a defensive head coach. This isn't a guy coming, I mean, this is about as far off age-wise from Todd Monken as you can get. This is not a guy coming in and saying, Lamar Jackson, let me tell you how it is. This is an opportunity for the two of them to collaborate, and I think that could be really exciting.
Yeah, I think what's also really cool about Declan Doyle is he worked with Sean Payton. And for whatever you want to say about Sean Payton, he's been one of those offensive minds that has shown you evolution with the game. There's so many of these coaches who were great in the late 2000s or great during a decade ago, and they haven't evolved. They haven't figured out how to acclimate to the new athlete of this age. He's seen that firsthand with Sean Payton, and then obviously coaching with Ben Johnson as well. And you look at some of the quarterbacks that he's been around, some of the players that he's seen, Taysom Hill in New Orleans. You saw the same thing with Bo Nix, who was drafted late when he was with the Denver Broncos, and then obviously last year with Caleb. So the run game is largely important, but understanding how to use a quarterback that can utilize his legs and the ways that that helps you to get them easy throws, easy completions, and there have to be some drive for the Baltimore Ravens where Lamar Jackson doesn't have to do much, and he doesn't have to carry the load all the time.
Yeah, it's a good point. The Bears were one of 5 offenses this season that ranked top 10 in pass yards and rush yards per game. Obviously, Ben Johnson and his run game had a big piece in that, but Declan Doyle certainly a part of it. Also, just to confirm, we kind of just said it, but Lamar Jackson and Declan Doyle are the exact same age at 29 years old, which has now successfully made all of us feel like real old farts.
They walk in the room like, what's happening, Woody?
Hey.
What up, Dad? What up, Dick?
Good old
Dick.
Dick. Hey, maybe that's what solidified the deal. They said, hey, you 29? Yeah, I'm 29 too. All right, let's make this happen. Coming up.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Anybody else? 9 days away from the Seahawks and Patriots going head-to-head in Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara. We got you covered with reports from both teams today. Mike Reese with the Patriots. Lindsey Theory is in Seattle. Both quarterbacks a little banged up heading into the Super Bowl. Mike, we start with you. What's the latest on Drake May's shoulder and his health in general?
Laura, Drake May did not practice today, according to head coach Mike Vrabel, due to illness. Vrabel saying that May was here at the facility and did take part in meetings. Now, this comes at the same time that May is managing a right shoulder injury that he sustained in the AFC Championship game. May was a limited participant in practice on Thursday. After that practice, he said he felt like he could get close to 100%, if not 100%. By the time the Super Bowl arrived, he said he didn't think the shoulder would affect his ability to make the throws he needed to make in the game. Now, at the same time, I will tell you, I was at that practice Thursday, and it was a bit unusual to not see May or any of the quarterbacks throwing. We usually see the quarterbacks throwing. The Patriots have had 2 practices this week. They'll have 4 next week in California. All eyes will be on Drake May and how he throws the football. Now, for more on the Seahawks, let's go to Lindsey Theory.
Mike, ahead of his first practice for the Super Bowl, I caught up with quarterback Sam Darnold briefly in the locker room. Darnold's in good spirits and tells me physically he's feeling good. Though when I asked him how much he planned on throwing, he joked 1 or 2 times, not exactly revealing his practice plan. He officially was listed as a limited participant in the workout. I also caught up with running back Kenneth Walker, who tells me their approach to practices right now are similar to those of a bye week, with a lot of mental reps. I asked Walker how this offense is continuing to excel, despite Darnold being limited now for a few weeks. Walker tells me it's because Darnold is still getting those mental reps, that you don't always have to practice to improve, and that the mental work with the attention paid to details and their process is helping the entire offense. Laura?
Thanks to Lindsey and Mike. Plenty of coverage continues in the lead up to Super Bowl 60. Let's talk about the Browns. New Browns head coach Todd Monken's arrived in Cleveland. A chat with Shedeur Sanders on his agenda. Take a listen.
How we doing, man? Good. Yeah, we tried to draft last year. It's all worked out. Yeah. You remember that, right?
Yeah, that's what I was about to tell you.
Someday we'll get a chance to talk about that.
All right, so Shedeur made the most of his starts of any Brown quarterback this season, but struggled with the accuracy issues more than Dylan Gabriel and Joe Flacco. 10 interceptions, just 8 combined from the others. However, Sanders went 3-4 as a starter, while Gabriel and Flacco went a combined 2-8. All right, Monken is going to have his work cut out for him, right, with Cleveland's current quarterback situation. Mina, is Monken the right man for the job when you think about all that he's going to have to handle?
Yeah, I mean, look, truth is I don't know if he's going to be a good head coach and all that comes with it. But I can tell you 2 things. One, judging by the fit he wore in that video, this man is all about football. Yeah. And 2, he knows how to call a hell of an offense. I like to mention the offense, like I'm not one to talk with fashion, but I just I want to talk about the offense for a second because I know people point to his success in Baltimore and they'll say, well, he had Lamar Jackson, no doubt. Y'all know I'm as big a fan of Lamar and his impact on defenses as anyone. But I also watched that offense really closely the last 2 years, and you guys, I'm sure, would agree, it was incredibly creative. There's a reason why he got so much more out of the passing game than Greg Roman did, quite frankly. I thought in terms of using different personnel groupings, the way he used motion to crack things open for the receivers, or, it's not the best group in the league, and the play-action passing attack were all excellent. I'm excited to see what he does with Harold Fannin Jr., given his success with Andrews and likely in Baltimore. The quarterback, of course, is the huge question here, but if they are going to go young, I do think it is valuable that he had recent success in college. So, again, I'm not saying this was a slam dunk hire. I don't know. But just from purely the perspective of the offense, Todd Monken is very good.
Yeah, I agree with that. Listen, it's going to be tough whoever takes over in Cleveland. This isn't a great offensive roster, especially when you get into the wide receiver room. Harold Fanning Jr., though, to me is an absolute star. Yeah. This is a guy who came out of nowhere to be a big-time player last year. And my mind starts to wonder what happens or how healthy can Quinshon Judkins be when and if he comes back next year. And so what he needs to figure out is how you can add some more playmakers to this offensive side of the football, because there is some young talent. We know one thing about him is he has creativity. He understands how to open up things in the play action, and he's coached at Georgia recently, and then obviously with Lamar Jackson and a run game that we saw in Baltimore that was able to not just utilize Derrick Henry, but we saw him with smaller running backs in the pass game and also in the run be able to create space.
Yeah, Marcus, on the defensive side, the defense has been a bright spot for the Browns. Now Jim Schwartz's future with the team is uncertain. How important is he to the identity and the success of this organization?
You speaking of Jim Schwartz importance? Boogie?
Yes.
Yeah, look, this one performance matters, right? It's been one of the better defenses. It's actually been the only sunshine in Cleveland for a long time. Have won games and kept them in games that they probably shouldn't have been in. I know Jim Schwartz's name was mentioned with potentially becoming the head coach as well. I think the relationship matters, right? And I know that this is probably going to be if he stays, it'll be, well, I could have been the head guy, but I think this is someone you would love to retain if possible, based on who he's worked with, how well they've done on that side of the unit. If they can't, they need to lean into a lot of, whoever the new defensive coordinator is, needs to lean into a lot of what they were already doing. There are obviously Myles Garrett is over there, the best defender in the NFL, but there's a lot of talent around Myles Garrett as well that we probably don't talk about enough, because Myles Garrett just does so many phenomenal things on the field. But when you think about this Cleveland team, and that was my thing when Todd Monken got hired, is now it's head coaching. We know, look, Todd Monken can call plays offensively.
Yeah.
He has been very, very good at his job, even though I've had some problems with how he's called specific games. But overall, he's done a really good job. I think more now about Cleveland is his head coaching job and delegation and finding the right people to help this organization be better on the field.
I think delegation is important, but there's also just so much to clean up from a perception standpoint with the Cleveland Browns, the way that the young quarterbacks were handled. We've obviously heard Mr. Haslam speaking on behalf of what Andrew Berry and the coaching staffs did in the drafts. What he needs to do is make this as close-knit and tight-knit of an organization where everything is, like Mina said, all about what we do on the football field and create the right culture. Defensively, I felt like they had that, but as an entire unit, that's been lacking for the Cleveland Browns in the last couple of years.
Yeah, he said when he got the job, even he was talking about it this morning, that this was why he came back to the NFL. This was why he left Georgia, which was a really comfortable job for him. They were having a ton of success, but he wanted to be an NFL head coach, and this was the goal. This is an opportunity. I don't think he'll take it lightly, but yeah.
Boogie, you know Todd. Todd is a really good coach.
He is.
He's really relatable.
He's a great leader.
I don't think people know him beyond knowing Todd Monken and the success from an offensive coordinator. He's a relatable guy. Players love playing for him. Like there are great sentiments about him from players that have played for him. Like RC said, though, Cleveland is a juggernaut.
Different.
To try to get righted. And this is going to be a job that he's never been associated with in his life. So it's going to take a lot of work. But he has the right makings to get guys on the right track.
Definitely. A long way to go, so we'll keep track of that. How about this, though, you guys? We had to just get this into the show because it's so great. When women's soccer meets the NFL, Trinity Rodman scores a goal. Then she hits the sexy Dexy with her coach of a, hey, Swaggo, you approve?
I love it. First of all, Trinity Rodman is so dope. Number one, just got that big check for playing soccer.
Yes, she is.
Athletic family. Her boyfriend plays tennis at a very high level. I don't know his name, but I've seen her. They're supporting him as well. They are dope.
Yeah.
It's gonna be. Ben Shelton. This is going to be a dope young couple with a lot of money, and I love that she got the sexy Dixie going on in a game.
Oh, it was just so good. She's like, listen, let me hit this. And it was obviously planned, which I love, because they're like, we know we're going to score, so we're going to be hitting this. All right, still to come. The Falcons off with the hiring of Matt Ryan, who led the searches for a new coach and GM, head coach, I should say. 1 week later, Atlanta found their man in Kevin Stefanski. Then on Thursday, the Falcons announced Ian Cunningham as their new GM. Marcus, what should be the first order of business in Atlanta now that they've got this new front office in place?
Bijan Robinson contract. That's number one, okay? And usually it's rare we talk about that before we get to the quarterback. But that should be first and foremost of how can we lock down arguably the most dynamic offensive player in the league. And then the other part is quarterback, obviously. Yeah, like we know if Michael Penix is going to be the guy, that evaluation needs to happen. And I know people are talking about Kirk Cousins and potentially him being the guy going forward. And maybe he will with Michael Penix's injury. But the quarterback position, as we talked about earlier in the show with Minnesota, is going to be the most prevalent thing. So get Bijan contract done, figure out a way to get that done, and then figure out if Michael Penix is your future or if you need to draft or be in positioning to try to get a quarterback that can carry you into the future with this new GM and head coaching situation.
I think the truth is with the quarterback position, they're probably going to have to do both because it'll be possible for them to fully evaluate Penix at this point, right, coming off of the injury. And so you want to give him a chance, but you also have to bring in some form of competition without a lot of money to spend at the position, as so many teams are in the same position. So that's something that he's going to have to do, whether that's in the draft or free agency. They're going to have to do those evaluations pretty quick. As far as the rest of the roster goes, I would also add there's a few free agents that are pretty important players. Caden Ellis, one of my favorite players to watch in the NFL, linebacker / pass rusher, is a free agent. And then they got to figure out what's going to happen with Kyle Pitts, who, you know, has had such an up and down NFL career, but has flashed enough to where you do seriously want to consider bringing him back. So it's a good roster. There's some free agents, but nothing, of course, matters more than figuring out what they're going to do at quarterback.
Yeah, interesting, Mina. I talked to Kyle Pitts at the end of the season. We had the Falcons on Monday Night Football, and he felt like even toward the end, it was more of an audition to see if the rest of the NFL would maybe want to make a move for him. He did, of course, say all the right things, like he liked being in Atlanta, but he was very aware that he may be on the move. Caden Ellis, by the way, they got to hold on to him. He's like the heartbeat of this defense. New on NFL Live. Let's get to this. Mike McCarthy was on Pat McAfee's show today, spoke about keeping a winning tradition going in Pittsburgh.
It's my responsibility to show up here every day and win, and that's just the way I've always gone about it because, you know, this is a 12-month job that you have to, you know, there's always something to do. There's always a video to watch. There's always a conversation to have. There's always things that, you know, it's sort of planning and getting ready for the next day. At the end of the day, you're guaranteed 17 games. You know, this is not a start over, you know, opportunity at all. And I think that's clear. I mean, it's a football team that, you know, in the playoffs last year. So to categorize it, it's a playoff roster.
So technically he's right. RC, do you agree that the Steelers have a playoff roster?
I mean, yeah, the Steelers have a roster that's capable of making the playoffs, but it's not one of those rosters that's a Super Bowl contender. And I think that's what's important in Pittsburgh. And so it's how many years will you just be good enough? Or is Mike McCarthy that head coach that can allow you to take that next step? And the first question has to be, who will be your quarterback? The one thing that people miss who were saying fire Mike Tomlin or we haven't had playoff success was that they never drafted early enough to get a quarterback. The reason that Ben Roethlisberger had such a successful tenure under Coach Cowher and Mike Tomlin was because they picked in the top 12 of the draft. Mike Tomlin only picked in that position one time, and they moved up to get Devin Bush. And so if Mike McCarthy is going to be a guy that's not going to settle for a rebuild, can he be the dude to allow them to take one more step than they have in the last decade and actually win a playoff game with this roster?
And, of course, that question's still looming out there. Can they get Aaron Rodgers? McCarthy did say earlier in the week that he had talked to him, but that's kind of all we know. All right, still to come. We're just 9 days away from Super Bowl 60. We've got Seahawks and Patriots going head-to-head in Santa Clara. It's Seattle's defense that's been in the spotlight all season, and they're ready to bring that momentum to the biggest stage. New on NFL Live, Seahawks head coach Mike Macdonald met with the media moments ago, speaking about the importance of his defensive line heading into Super Bowl 60.
I think their attitude and their approach every day is a little bit of a microcosm of how our whole team operates, you know, and we've talked about this before, but that is a group that, one, has a lot of great players and a lot of leaders on our team, so they are going to be, voices throughout the rest of the team, and they are going to be setting the example through a lot of the rest of the guys on the team, and if they operate like that, and they put the actions behind how we say we want to operate, that's powerful for the rest of the team, so I think that's been a critical part of our team's success this year has been, how our D-line operates.
I agree. The Seahawks defense has been excellent all season, including the playoffs. Seattle's D ranks first in points per game, yards per rush, and third down percentage. Nothing easy for their opponents, right? This is the fewest points they've allowed since 2014, which was the year of their last Super Bowl. Marcus, Drake May has been using his legs to make plays all season. He's done it in the postseason as well. How can Seattle try to slow down that part of his game?
Yeah, the communication on the interior, Boogie, with these defensive tackles and making sure that they're covering for each other, outside ends, making sure you're not getting too high past him and allowing him to duck under and use his legs as well. Look, this has been a very opportunistic offense. Now, they've had adverse weather conditions, and obviously they played Houston in the first playoff game, which gave them a lot of problems. They've been explosive and opportunistic at times. Last week, we saw Drake May legs, quite frankly, win the game offensively for the New England Patriots. This is a different animal with Seattle. They're big, they're athletic, and they really have a great understanding of where to be and how to track the football. That's going to be something that they are going to have to pay attention to. So I'm looking forward to seeing the plan from the Seattle Seahawks, because you have to have one when you have athletic quarterbacks like this. And then also, when you start thinking about the Super Bowl, right? This is it. This is the last game that you have to play in this particular season. So from Mike Macdonald's perspective, what new looks and nuance will you have up front, pressure-wise and game calling-wise from a defensive line perspective, will be implemented in this game? A lot of coaches talk about, well, we don't want to change much. Well, you better have something that they haven't seen all season long. And with the players and personnel that Seattle has, I think they can get a lot accomplished in that vein.
Yeah, I think you're smart to mention the defensive tackles, because we know that's where Drake May in particular likes to scramble, is through the teeth of the defense. Yep. So you've talked about his legs. I'm going to talk about his arm here. I think he's going to have to throw the ball deep for them to win this one. And, of course, Drake May was arguably the best deep passer in the NFL this season, led the entire league in tight window completions, throwing downfield. But on the flip side, the Seattle Seahawks defense allowed the second most yards on tight window completions downfield and just 2.1 yards per attempt. So this is a real strength on strength thing. I think it's going to come down to who wins some of those 50-50 balls. We just saw in this game against Seattle, while Matthew Stafford was able to throw on them in those high leverage moments, Eamon Witherspoon, Woolen were able to break up passes. So when you get that matchup, Diggs on Witherspoon downfield or Kayshon Boutte on Woolen, if it's a 50-50 ball and I trust Drake May to put it in the right place, who's going to come down with it? Can you win? And I really think those 50-50 matchups between the Patriots receivers and the Seattle DBs are going to be massive.
Yes, this is the worst show in the world to be third on, but it's okay. I'll go.
You drew the short straw this segment.
Yeah, all the time. It's all the time. By the time you go third, all the smart stuff has been taken. Now you're just regurgitating things, just like I just listened in the production meeting and stole their notes. But I think that's the most important piece when Seattle's on defense. And I look at Josh Jobe and Reek Woolen. You don't see this happening a lot to Devin Witherspoon. There was obviously the inside release to Puka, and then, we saw the post corner to Devontae as well on Witherspoon. But so many times it's going to be on Job and Woolen down the field to make these one-on-one plays. We watched last week as Patrick Surtain II shut down 2 deep balls, a deep post and a go ball to Kayshon Boutte, and the difference that made in the game. If you go to the week prior, Kamari Lassiter was targeted 4 or 5 times. He came up with the plays. Derek Stingley did not. If you take away the chunk plays on the outside, I think it's going to be extremely difficult for New England to move the football.
Yeah, especially, we will talk about this a lot in the coming weeks, but the things tied together. I think Seattle's going to play a lot of zone defense, right? They're not going to allow Drake May to scramble on them. And I do think there's going to be those opportunities that you have seen May take advantage of all year to, when the Seahawks are playing quarters or cover 6, throw over the top because you get the one-on-one with the corner. I know I've mentioned that a lot. I do think those opportunities will be there. And while most quarterbacks this season did not connect on them versus Seattle, Drake May has to in this game. He has to, I believe, for them to win.
All right, as Mina said, we're going to be on this game all next week, all into the lead-up, and so much more coming your way on this show that you can catch us at Santa Clara. But time for one more thing.